Detective Laura Reynolds drove slowly along the empty road leading to the old warehouse. The sky was gray, and a cool breeze carried the smell of wet earth mixed with dust from the abandoned area. She had been called here because of strange reports from neighbors. They had said they heard odd noises late at night, sometimes a faint smell that no one could identify. People were afraid to come near, and some whispered that something terrible had happened inside the building. Laura had worked in law enforcement for years, and she had learned to trust her instincts. Something about this case felt different, urgent, and she knew she had to be careful. The warehouse was large, with cracked windows and rusty doors. Paint had peeled off the walls and weeds had grown through the concrete. Inside, the space was dark except for shafts of light coming through the broken windows. Laura switched on her flashlight and the beam cut through the dust-filled air. Everything was quiet except for the faint creaking of the old building as it swayed slightly in the wind. She felt her heart beat faster, not from fear but from anticipation. She had a feeling that today could change the course of a long, unsolved case. With her flashlight in one hand, Laura reached for the leash of her cadaver dog, Max, a large German shepherd trained to detect human remains. Max was calm but alert, his ears pricked and his nose twitching. Laura knelt beside him and whispered, "Show me what you find, Max." The dog sniffed the air, moving carefully across the concrete floor. He circled the warehouse slowly, his eyes sharp and his nose to the ground. Laura watched as Max stopped in front of a certain section of the floor. He sniffed repeatedly, then scratched at the concrete with his paws. The scratching was quick at first, then more persistent, as if he was trying to dig through the solid surface. Laura knelt beside Max, placing her hand gently on his back. "Good boy," she said quietly. She had handled many cadaver dogs in her career, and she knew that when a dog like Max focused on a spot this way, it was a very serious sign. Max never made mistakes. If he was digging here, it meant that something important was hidden beneath the concrete. Laura's mind raced as she thought of the possibilities. This could be a missing person, a piece of evidence, or something else entirely. But one thing was certain. Max had led her to something that no one had seen for months, maybe even years. Laura radioed the forensic team. "We have a strong lead here," she said. "Bring the equipment to carefully break through the concrete. Max has identified a spot." The voice on the radio confirmed they were on their way. Laura stood and took a deep breath. She looked around the warehouse, noting the shadows and the small piles of debris. Everything was silent except for Max, who continued to scratch at the floor, his tail wagging slightly but his focus unwavering. It was a strange feeling, seeing a dog so excited and serious at the same time. Max was both happy and tense, as if he understood the importance of what he had found. While waiting for the team, Laura began to survey the area. She saw old crates stacked against the walls, broken chairs, and remnants of past activity. Nothing looked recent, but the sense of something hidden made the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. She moved carefully, taking photographs of the floor and marking the exact spot where Max was scratching. Every detail mattered. Laura had learned that careful documentation was often what solved cases. A single photograph, a small mark, or even the pattern of scratches could be the key to connecting the pieces later. Minutes later, the forensic team arrived. They carried hammers, chisels, and small crowbars. One of the technicians, a young man named Peter, nodded to Laura. "We'll work slowly," he said. "We don't want to damage anything important underneath." Laura appreciated the caution. She knelt beside Max, who now sat patiently, watching the team get ready. His eyes never left the spot. It was as if he was silently telling everyone, "This is it. This is where it's hidden." Laura smiled at Max and whispered, "Let's see what you found, boy." The team began chipping away at the concrete carefully. The sound of hammering echoed through the warehouse. Dust filled the air and Laura covered her nose with her sleeve. Max sniffed the air constantly, sometimes pawing at the small chips of concrete that fell away. Time seemed to stretch as the team worked slowly, layer by layer. Every now and then Max would bark softly, drawing attention to a particular area. Laura felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. She had been in situations like this before, but nothing compared to the anticipation of uncovering something hidden for so long. As the concrete began to break apart, small fragments revealed a shallow cavity beneath. Laura's heart quickened. She crouched closer, shining her flashlight into the small opening. The space was tight, but it clearly contained something wrapped in an old, dirty cloth. Laura's hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from the realization that this could be the break in the case they had been waiting for. Max barked again, louder this time, as if to celebrate the discovery. Laura patted his head. "You did it, Max, you really did it," Laura called over the team leader. "Carefully remove the bundle," she instructed. Peter nodded and gently pulled the cloth from the cavity. It was heavy and solid. Laura's stomach tightened as she realized that whatever was inside had been hidden deliberately, with care. To avoid discovery, she thought about the victim's family, the people who had been waiting for answers, not knowing what had happened. Every detective knew that moments like this were both rewarding and heartbreaking. The discovery of something hidden for months could bring relief, closure, or grief. Sometimes all three at once. The cloth unwrapped slowly revealed a collection of items and an unmistakable presence. Human remains. Laura's breath caught in her throat. Max sat quietly, his tail wagging softly, almost as if he understood that the discovery was serious. Laura documented everything meticulously, taking photographs and notes. She knew that these details would be critical for the investigation and for the court. The careful collection of evidence was just as important as the discovery itself. Every fiber, every fragment of cloth, every bone could tell a story. Laura reflected on the journey to this point. The case had started months ago with missing person reports, small clues, and dead ends. She remembered reviewing files late at night, tracing the last known movements of the victim, and interviewing witnesses who had seen suspicious activity. Every lead had been followed, every tip investigated. Yet it was Max, the cadaver dog, who finally led them to the breakthrough. Laura had always believed in teamwork, in trusting the skills of trained professionals, and today it was proven right. The instincts of a well-trained dog, combined with careful police work, had brought them to this crucial moment. As the forensic team worked, Laura kept looking at Max. The dog had remained focused, unwavering, and precise. Laura knew that dogs like Max were more than pets. They were partners, capable of sensing things humans could not. Their training, combined with instinct, could uncover truths that even the most careful detective might miss. Max had chosen this spot for a reason, and it was clear that he had made the difference. The warehouse, silent and empty for so long, had finally given up its secret, and Max had been the key. By the end of the day, the evidence was safely removed and secured. Laura took one last look at the warehouse floor, now cracked and broken, revealing the cavity beneath. She felt a mixture of relief and determination. The case was far from over, but they had the lead they needed. The next steps would involve tracing the identity of the victim, connecting the evidence to suspects, and uncovering the story behind the hidden remains. But for now, Laura allowed herself a moment to acknowledge the significance of what had happened. Max had done his job, and together, they had uncovered the first piece of a story that had been hidden in silence for too long. The forensic team worked carefully to examine the bundle that Max had helped uncover. Detective Laura Reynolds watched closely as Peter and his colleagues removed the remaining fragments of concrete around the hidden cavity. Every piece was handled with precision. The air was filled with the soft hum of concentration, interrupted only by the occasional scratching of Max's paws on the dusty floor. The dog had now sat quietly, alert and watchful, his eyes following every movement. Laura could feel the anticipation building. They were on the verge of learning the story behind what had been hidden for months, perhaps years. Once the bundle was safely on a clean table, the team began to unroll the cloth carefully. The remains were wrapped tightly, the cloth old and stained. Laura felt a chill as she examined it, but she reminded herself that maintaining focus was critical. Every detail could be a clue to solving the mystery. The bundle revealed more than just the remains. There were personal items as well, items that could help identify the victim. A small necklace, a faded photograph, and a few pieces of jewelry were discovered inside. Laura carefully documented each item, photographing them from different angles. She knew that this documentation would be essential for connecting the evidence to the investigation and for presenting in court later. Laura knelt beside Max, who wagged his tail lightly as if sensing her relief. The dog had been the silent hero, guiding them to this crucial discovery. She scratched behind his ears and whispered, "You did an amazing job, Max. We couldn't have done this without you." Max barked softly in response, almost in acknowledgement, and then sat patiently as the team continued their work. It was remarkable to see how a trained dog could provide such a precise lead, especially after months of uncertainty and dead ends in the case. The detective thought back to the beginning of the investigation. It had started with a report of a missing young woman named Emily Saunders. She was last seen leaving her job at a local cafe, and her family had reported her disappearance after several days without any contact. Laura had reviewed security footage, interviewed friends and neighbors, and followed up on every lead. Yet none had provided a solid clue, until now. Max's ability to detect human remains had changed everything. This discovery meant they could finally move forward with the case in a meaningful way. Peter carefully lifted each item from the bundle, labeling and placing it in separate evidence bags. He handed the necklace to Laura, who examined it closely. It was delicate, with a small pendant that appeared to be engraved with initials. Laura noted the engraving, knowing that it could be the key to confirming the victim's identity. The photograph showed a smiling young woman, her hair neatly tied back, wearing a casual outfit. Laura felt a mix of sadness and determination. This was Emily. The evidence confirmed what she had feared and hoped. They had found the young woman who had been missing for so long. Once the evidence was secured, Laura turned her attention to the warehouse itself. The concrete floor had hidden the bundle for months, possibly years. She wondered how the person responsible had managed to conceal it so carefully. The warehouse had been abandoned, yet it had remained accessible. Someone had deliberately chosen this location, knowing that it would likely go unnoticed. Laura made a mental note to investigate who had access to the building and when. Every small detail mattered. The location, the condition of the floor, and the timing of when the bundle was hidden could all provide vital clues about the person responsible. As the day continued, Laura coordinated with the local police department to begin tracing leads connected to the warehouse. They reviewed records of who had rented or visited the building in the past year. Witnesses were contacted, and neighbors were interviewed again, this time with more focused questions. Security footage from surrounding areas was examined, looking for any vehicles or individuals that might have been near the warehouse at unusual times. Laura knew that every detail could help them build a timeline and connect the evidence to potential suspects. Meanwhile, Max stayed close, his nose still twitching as he occasionally sniffed the edges of the evidence table. Laura smiled at him. Dogs like Max had an extraordinary ability to detect things humans could not. Their training, combined with instinct, made them invaluable partners in investigations like this. Laura thought about how far they had come in just one day. From arriving at the warehouse to uncovering the hidden cavity and discovering the bundle, the case had taken a dramatic turn. What had once seemed like a mystery with no answers was now becoming clear, and the path to justice was opening up. The team also called in forensic specialists to perform preliminary tests on the remains. They carefully collected DNA samples and documented the condition of the bones. Laura watched as the experts worked with precision, knowing that these tests would provide crucial information about the time of death and potentially the identity of the victim. Every step had to be done meticulously to ensure that nothing was overlooked. Laura understood that this evidence could make or break the case, and she was determined to handle it with the utmost care. As evening approached, the warehouse became quiet. The team had packed up most of the equipment, but Laura stayed behind for a moment, kneeling beside Max. She thought about the young woman whose life had been cut short, about her family waiting for answers, and about the long road ahead to bring justice. Max nudged her hand gently, reminding her that they had already made a breakthrough. Laura smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment mixed with resolve. This was just the beginning, but it was a critical step. Once the evidence was secured, Laura returned to her car to make phone calls. She informed Emily's family that her belongings had been found and that they could come in for identification once the DNA results were confirmed. She spoke with compassion, understanding the emotions the family would feel: relief, grief, and hope all at once. Laura promised them that the investigation would continue and that the person responsible would be held accountable. The family's gratitude was heartfelt, and Laura felt a renewed sense of purpose. That night, as Laura left the warehouse, Max rode in the passenger seat of her car, tired but content. The case had taken a turn they had all been waiting for, and the discovery of the hidden bundle had set the stage for solving the mystery. Laura thought about the months of investigation, the dead ends and the frustrations, and she realized that patience and persistence, combined with Max's skill, had led to this moment. The warehouse, silent and dusty for so long, had finally revealed its secret. In the days that followed, the police department continued to gather evidence and follow leads connected to the warehouse. Laura and her team reviewed records, spoke with neighbors, and examined the building thoroughly for any additional clues. Every detail mattered, and the discovery by Max had given them a clear starting point. The team remained focused, knowing that the evidence from the warehouse could be the key to finding the person responsible for Emily's disappearance. Laura often reflected on the day's events. She remembered Max's precise scratching at the concrete, the moment the cavity was revealed, and the careful unwrapping of the bundle. She thought about how a single dog with trained instincts and dedication could make such a difference. Max had been the hero of the day, guiding them to the evidence that had been hidden for months. Laura knew that the combination of human determination and canine skill was what had made this discovery possible. The case had changed dramatically. From uncertainty and fear, they had moved to clarity and direction. The discovery of the hidden bundle beneath the concrete floor was not just a breakthrough, it was a turning point. Laura felt the weight of responsibility, but also the hope that justice could be served. Max sat quietly beside her, sensing the importance of the moment, and Laura knew that together, they were ready to take the next steps in solving the mystery and bringing peace to Emily's family. Detective Laura Reynolds sat at her desk, reviewing the evidence collected from the warehouse. The photographs of the personal items and the remains were spread in front of her, each carefully labeled and catalogued. Every detail mattered, from the position of the bones to the small necklace with initials that could help confirm the identity of the victim. The discovery had already provided a breakthrough in the case, but Laura knew that finding the person responsible was the next critical step. She could not afford to rush. Each decision now would determine whether justice would be served or delayed. Her thoughts drifted back to Max, the cadaver dog. Max had been the hero of the day, guiding them to the hidden cavity beneath the concrete. Laura reached over and patted his head gently as he lay beside her chair. The dog had been calm and alert all morning, his instincts unwavering. Laura knew that without him, they might never have found the bundle. Max had not only detected the remains, but had also signaled with precise behavior exactly where the team needed to focus. His skills reminded Laura of how vital canine partners were in law enforcement. She smiled, thinking of how many cases had been solved thanks to dogs like Max. The forensic team had begun testing the remains. DNA samples were carefully collected and sent to the lab for identification. Laura received the first report. The remains were indeed those of Emily Saunders, the young woman who had been missing for months. Her heart ached at the confirmation, but there was also relief. At least the family would finally have answers. Laura made a note to contact them personally, knowing that her words would bring a mix of emotions, grief, relief, and the beginnings of closure. With the victim identified, the investigation shifted focus to uncovering who was responsible. Laura and her team began tracing the history of the warehouse. They reviewed rental records, old contracts, and permits to determine who had access over the past year. Neighbors were interviewed again, and this time questions were more specific. Laura asked about anyone unusual seen entering the building, strange vehicles, or late-night activity. Each answer was carefully logged, and patterns began to emerge. Some residents remembered seeing a man unloading boxes late at night. Others had noticed a car parked nearby for hours on multiple occasions. Laura felt a sense of urgency. These small details could lead them to the suspect. Meanwhile, Max continued to play a vital role. He accompanied Laura during interviews, sniffing around areas of interest and occasionally signaling when he detected something unusual. His presence was calming to the team and a source of inspiration for the detectives. Laura noted the bond between humans and trained dogs, understanding how much trust and teamwork contributed to solving complex cases. She knew that Max's instincts had provided a path that no amount of investigation alone could have revealed. Security footage from nearby streets was reviewed carefully. Laura and her team looked at each frame, tracking the movements of vehicles and pedestrians around the warehouse. They noticed a car that appeared multiple times during the days leading up to Emily's disappearance. The license plate was partially visible, but enough to cross-reference with local vehicle records. It belonged to a man named Daniel Whitaker, who had a history of suspicious behavior and minor criminal offenses. Laura felt a surge of determination. This lead could finally connect the evidence to a real person and bring them closer to solving the case. Laura organized a meeting with her team to discuss their next steps. "We have identified a person of interest," she said. "Daniel Whitaker had access to the warehouse and was seen nearby multiple times. We need to build a strong case before approaching him. Every detail we have from the warehouse, the items we found, and the evidence from the neighborhood will be important." The team nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. They began reviewing all evidence again, making connections between Daniel's movements, the timing of Emily's disappearance, and the location of the hidden bundle. The detective also reached out to Emily's family. She wanted them to be prepared for what was happening without causing unnecessary panic. Laura spoke gently, explaining that they had discovered Emily's belongings and remains, but reassured them that the investigation was progressing. The family's response was emotional, as expected. Tears were shed, but there were also expressions of gratitude toward Laura and her team. For the first time in months, they felt hope. Laura promised them that the investigation would continue, and that justice would be sought. She hung up the phone, feeling the weight of responsibility but also a renewed sense of purpose. The next day, Laura and her team visited the warehouse again. Max led the way, sniffing the corners and indicating areas of interest. The team documented any remaining evidence and marked locations that could provide additional clues. Laura carefully examined the concrete floor, noting how the bundle had been hidden beneath it. She considered the effort it would take to conceal something in that manner. Whoever did this had planned carefully, likely thinking no one would ever discover it. Laura felt a mix of frustration and determination. This person had hidden a terrible secret, but now the truth was coming to light. As they continued their work, Laura coordinated with the lab to expedite testing on the personal items. The necklace with initials, the photograph, and other belongings were analyzed for fingerprints, DNA, and other forensic evidence. Every piece of data would help connect the suspect to the crime. Laura watched closely as the lab technicians worked with precision, understanding that these details were the key to building a solid case that could stand in court. She reminded herself that thoroughness now would prevent mistakes later. Throughout the investigation, Max remained a constant presence. He was more than a dog. He was a partner, a guide, and a source of insight that humans could not replicate. Laura often reflected on how much training, patience, and trust went into working with a cadaver dog. Max had spent years learning to detect human remains and signal accurately to his handlers. Today, all of that training had paid off in a way that was profound and undeniable. Laura knew that Max's instincts had changed the course of the investigation and brought them closer to justice for Emily. Laura and her team also began examining Daniel Whitaker's background. They reviewed his criminal history, employment records, and personal connections. Each detail provided potential insight into his behavior and motives. Witnesses were interviewed about his activities and whereabouts during the days leading up to Emily's disappearance. Laura and her colleagues worked tirelessly, piecing together a timeline that could link him to the crime. The careful collection of facts, combined with the evidence from the warehouse, was forming a clearer picture with each passing day. Meanwhile, Max's presence continued to be invaluable. He accompanied detectives to other locations related to the investigation, signaling when he detected scents connected to human remains or other relevant evidence. His consistent accuracy reminded Laura of how important it was to trust trained instincts and intuition. Without Max, they might never have found the hidden bundle, and the trail could have gone cold. Laura often praised the dog quietly, appreciating the silent yet powerful contribution he made to the case. As the investigation progressed, the team felt a growing sense of momentum. The evidence from the warehouse, combined with the leads on Daniel Whitaker, provided a direction that had previously been lacking. Laura scheduled a briefing with senior detectives to present the findings and discuss the strategy for questioning the suspect. They planned carefully, ensuring that all evidence was properly documented, witnesses prepared, and legal procedures followed. Laura understood that this step would be critical to ensure the case could be successfully prosecuted. In the evenings, Laura often returned to her notes, reviewing every piece of evidence, every witness statement, and every detail from the warehouse. She thought about Emily's family, about the young woman who had gone missing, and about the responsibility she carried as a detective. Max often lay by her side, providing silent companionship and support. Laura knew that this case was more than just a mystery. It was about bringing justice, closure, and hope to people whose lives had been disrupted by tragedy. By the end of Part 3, the investigation had taken a clear and focused path. The discovery of the hidden bundle had provided a breakthrough, Max's instincts had guided the detectives, and the evidence was pointing toward a specific suspect. Laura and her team were ready to take the next steps, confident that the pieces of the puzzle were coming together. With careful planning, dedication, and the guidance of a remarkable canine partner, they were on the brink of solving a case that had left a community in fear and uncertainty. The suspense and anticipation continued to build, as every day brought them closer to the truth. Detective Laura Reynolds sat at the command center, reviewing the latest updates on the investigation. Daniel Whitaker, the man linked to the warehouse, had become their primary focus. His movements, habits, and personal connections were being examined in detail. Laura knew that building a strong case required patience. They needed proof, witnesses, and evidence that could withstand scrutiny in court. One wrong move could let a dangerous individual slip away. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that this was about justice for Emily Saunders and peace for her family. Meanwhile, Max, the cadaver dog, sat alert near the evidence board, his ears twitching at every sound in the room. The dog had been essential from the beginning, guiding the team to the hidden bundle beneath the concrete. Laura often watched Max quietly, thinking about how his instincts had made a difference that no human could. Today he would continue to play a role as they tracked leads connected to Daniel. His presence was reassuring to the team, a reminder that careful observation and trained intuition could uncover the truth. Laura called a meeting with her team to outline the next steps. "We need to establish a timeline for Daniel Whitaker's movements and connect him to the warehouse," she said. "We also need to check any associates he might have had and see if they noticed anything unusual. Remember, every small detail could help us link him to the crime." The detectives nodded, taking notes and preparing to follow up on witness statements, surveillance footage, and any other evidence that might tie Daniel to Emily's disappearance. The team began reviewing security cameras from streets surrounding the warehouse. Multiple clips showed Daniel's car parked nearby at unusual times. On one evening, he was seen unloading several large boxes into the warehouse. The footage did not show what was inside, but it confirmed that he had been present in the building during the critical period when Emily had gone missing. Laura felt a mixture of relief and determination. Finally, they had a direct connection between the suspect and the location where the evidence had been hidden. Witnesses were re-interviewed with this new information. One neighbor remembered seeing Daniel leave the warehouse late at night, carrying what looked like a heavy bundle. Another recalled hearing noises inside, like the sound of something being dragged across the concrete. Laura documented every detail carefully. Each testimony reinforced the connection between Daniel and the warehouse, building a stronger case. She knew that consistency between witnesses, physical evidence, and surveillance footage was crucial in establishing credibility in court. The forensic lab continued its work. Fingerprints on the personal items found in the hidden bundle were being compared with Daniel's records. DNA from the remains had confirmed the identity of Emily Saunders, and lab technicians were now examining hair fibers and other traces that could provide additional evidence. Laura monitored the progress closely. Each piece of scientific data was another step toward holding Daniel accountable. She reminded herself that thoroughness at this stage could prevent mistakes later, ensuring that justice would be achieved. Max continued to assist in the investigation. He accompanied detectives to Daniel's known locations, sniffing for any residual scents that might lead to additional evidence. At one property, Max indicated a spot near a storage area, and further inspection revealed discarded materials that matched items found in the warehouse. This discovery added another layer of proof, showing that Daniel had attempted to hide or move evidence. Laura was impressed by the dog's precision, Max's abilities had provided them with a path that human observation alone could not have achieved. Laura also coordinated with local law enforcement to monitor Daniel's activities. Officers were assigned to watch his movements discreetly, making sure he did not leave town or destroy evidence. Every report was relayed to Laura, and the team analyzed patterns to predict his next possible actions. The careful surveillance ensured that when the time came to confront him, they would have the upper hand. Laura knew that patience was essential. Rushing could jeopardize the case and endanger the team. In the meantime, Laura maintained communication with Emily's family. She updated them on progress, explaining that the suspect had been identified and that they were gathering evidence to build a strong case. The family expressed gratitude for her dedication and relief that the investigation was moving forward. Laura listened to their emotions with care, understanding that hope and closure were intertwined in this difficult time. She reminded them that justice was still the goal, and that patience and precision were necessary to ensure the right outcome. The day arrived when the team decided to execute a search warrant at one of Daniel's properties. Laura briefed everyone on the plan, emphasizing safety, procedure, and careful collection of evidence. Max was brought along, ready to assist in detecting any hidden materials. The team approached quietly, entering the property with precision. Every room was searched, every corner inspected. Laura's experience guided the team, making sure they did not miss a single detail. During the search, Max signaled near a storage shed behind the house. The dog barked softly and pawed at a spot on the ground. Laura knelt beside him, recognizing the significance of the signal. Peter and other technicians began carefully removing debris and checking for hidden items. Soon they discovered materials similar to what had been found in the warehouse. Laura documented everything, understanding that this would further link Daniel to the crime. Each piece of evidence was meticulously collected, photographed, and stored. As the investigation intensified, Daniel Whitaker became aware of the attention he was receiving. The team had noticed changes in his behavior. He was more cautious, avoiding certain areas and limiting contact with friends. Laura understood that this was a sign they were close to confirming his involvement. The combination of surveillance, forensic evidence, witness statements, and Max's guidance had created a comprehensive picture. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, making it difficult for Daniel to evade accountability. Laura reflected on the significance of the case. From the moment Max had scratched at the concrete floor in the warehouse, the investigation had gained momentum. The discovery of the hidden bundle, the identification of Emily Saunders, and the evidence connecting Daniel Whitaker had transformed what was once a frustrating mystery into a focused and actionable investigation. Laura felt a mix of satisfaction and determination, knowing that the end of the case was approaching and that justice could soon be served. In the final hours of the search, the team uncovered additional documents and personal items that tied Daniel directly to Emily. Receipts, notes, and discarded belongings confirmed his presence and activity in the warehouse during the relevant period. Laura felt a surge of relief. Every new piece of evidence strengthened the case and increased the likelihood that the suspect would be held responsible. Max lay nearby, calm but alert, his instincts having guided the investigation to this critical point. The next morning, Laura prepared for the confrontation with Daniel. Every detail of the investigation had been carefully reviewed, and the team was ready. They had collected enough evidence to ensure that the questioning would lead to meaningful results. Laura reminded herself that patience, careful planning, and respect for procedure were essential. This was the moment when the pieces of the puzzle would come together, and the truth about Emily Saunders would be fully revealed. By the end of Part 4, the investigation had reached a pivotal stage. The suspect had been identified, his connection to the warehouse confirmed, and additional evidence gathered from his property. The team, guided by Max's instincts and Laura's leadership, was ready to move forward with a planned confrontation. The suspense was at its peak, and the stage was set for the dramatic resolution that would follow. The community, Emily's family, and the entire team waited anxiously, knowing that the culmination of months of investigation was finally within reach. Detective Laura Reynolds and her team gathered early in the morning to prepare for confronting Daniel Whitaker. The warehouse and surrounding areas had been thoroughly examined, and the evidence connecting him to Emily Saunders was strong. Laura reviewed the plan once more, ensuring that every officer knew their role, that all procedures would be followed carefully, and that Max, the cadaver dog, would be present to provide support and detect any hidden items. Every detail mattered. The team was determined to execute the operation with precision. Daniel arrived at his property unaware that law enforcement had pieced together a complete picture of his activities. Surveillance, witness statements, forensic evidence from the warehouse, and the items found at his home left little doubt about his involvement. Laura knew that approaching him carefully was crucial. They needed a confession or additional evidence, but safety and legality were priorities. The team positioned themselves strategically, ready to respond quickly if anything went wrong. Max sat calmly by Laura's side, alert but quiet, his instincts finely tuned to the moment. Laura knocked on Daniel's door. When he opened it, he looked surprised, his expression shifting quickly to concern as he realized the police presence. Laura introduced herself and explained that they were investigating Emily Saunders's disappearance and that they had collected evidence linking him to the warehouse. Daniel tried to appear calm, but subtle signs, fidgeting, avoiding eye contact, a slight tremor in his hands, revealed his anxiety. Laura's team remained professional, allowing him to speak while maintaining control of the situation. As the questioning began, Daniel initially denied any involvement. Laura remained patient, asking questions calmly, giving him time to respond. She knew that pushing too hard too quickly could cause him to shut down or become defensive. Every word, gesture, and pause was observed. Max remained at her side, occasionally sniffing areas where Daniel had been standing or touching. The dog's presence added a silent pressure, an unspoken reminder that every action and movement was being noticed. Gradually, inconsistencies began to appear in Daniel's story. Laura asked about his whereabouts during the period of Emily's disappearance, about the warehouse, and about the items found in his possession. His answers were vague and contradictory. Each inconsistency strengthened the case, and Laura knew that presenting the facts clearly and logically would eventually lead him to admit the truth. She remained calm, letting the evidence speak for itself while keeping the conversation controlled and professional. After hours of questioning, Daniel finally broke down. The weight of evidence, combined with careful interrogation and Max's presence, made it impossible for him to maintain his story. He confessed to his actions, revealing how and why he had hidden Emily's belongings in the warehouse. Laura listened carefully, documenting every detail. She knew that recording a full confession, along with the evidence, would be essential for court proceedings. The confession brought a mixture of relief and sorrow. Justice was finally within reach, but it came at the cost of a life tragically taken too soon. With Daniel's confession secured, Laura organized a return to the warehouse to verify details and ensure all evidence had been accounted for. Max led the way, sniffing carefully at the locations mentioned by Daniel. The dog's guidance confirmed the accuracy of his statements and helped locate additional items that had been overlooked. Each discovery reinforced the case, leaving no room for doubt. Laura felt satisfaction in seeing the puzzle pieces finally fitting together. The combination of human determination, trained instincts, and thorough investigation had achieved results. The forensic team continued to analyze the evidence collected from both the warehouse and Daniel's property. Every item, personal belongings, clothing, documents, and forensic traces, was carefully examined and cataloged.
DNA analysis, fingerprinting, and other tests provided further confirmation of Daniel's involvement.
Laura monitored the results closely, knowing that these details would ensure a solid case in court. The thoroughness of the investigation gave her confidence that justice would be served, and that Emily's family could finally find closure. Laura contacted Emily's family again to share the news. She explained that the suspect had confessed, that additional evidence had been collected, and that the investigation was nearly complete. The family's response was emotional, filled with tears of relief and gratitude. Laura offered comfort, understanding the complex emotions they were experiencing, grief for the loss but hope for justice. She reminded them that the legal process would continue carefully, ensuring that the suspect would be held accountable for his actions. Community members who had followed the case were also informed that progress had been made. News of Max the cadaver dog spread quickly, with people praising his remarkable instincts and contributions. Laura reflected on how critical teamwork, patience, and attention to detail had been. Max had led them to the hidden bundle, provided guidance during searches, and even helped verify the suspect's statements. His role was invaluable, demonstrating the powerful bond between humans and trained animals in law enforcement. Laura spent time reviewing every aspect of the case one final time. From the moment Max had scratched at the concrete floor in the warehouse to the confession of Daniel Whitaker, the investigation had followed a precise path. Each piece of evidence, every witness statement, and all forensic tests had contributed to building a comprehensive and airtight case. Laura felt pride in her team, in Max, and in the meticulous process that had brought the investigation to a successful conclusion. The day of the arrest and confrontation ended with a sense of closure. Daniel Whitaker was taken into custody and escorted to the local police station. He was formally charged with the crime, and legal proceedings were prepared. Laura ensured that all documentation, evidence, and witness statements were organized and ready for presentation in court. Every step had been planned to maintain integrity and transparency in the process, reflecting the importance of following procedure in serious investigations. As evening fell, Laura returned to the warehouse one last time. The building, once silent and empty, now felt like a place where truth had been revealed. Max walked beside her, sniffing lightly as they moved through the dusty floor. The cavity in the concrete had been fully documented and all items removed for analysis. Laura reflected on the journey, from the initial discovery to the final confession. The warehouse had held its secret for months, but with patience, skill, and determination, justice had finally been achieved. Laura also took a moment to consider the role of Max. The dog had been more than a partner. He had been a guide, a teacher, and a silent companion who had made the impossible possible. His instincts had led them to the hidden evidence. His presence had helped verify details, and his calm demeanor had contributed to the success of the investigation. Laura patted Max's head gently, whispering her thanks. The dog wagged his tail in response, seemingly understanding the significance of the moment. Back at the station, the team debriefed. They discussed the investigation, shared insights, and celebrated the successful outcome. Laura emphasized the importance of thorough documentation, collaboration, and trust in both human and canine partners. The discovery, the evidence, and the confession had all combined to bring closure to a case that had troubled the community for months. The team felt satisfaction in knowing that their work had made a real difference in the lives of Emily's family and the community at large. In the weeks that followed, Emily's family received the remains and belongings, allowing them to honor her memory properly. Laura attended the brief memorial, witnessing the gratitude and relief on their faces. It was a reminder of why she had chosen this line of work, why patience and careful investigation mattered, and how even the smallest clue, like Max's persistent scratching, could lead to answers. The community praised the work of the police and the incredible instincts of Max, highlighting the importance of teamwork, training, and dedication. By the end of the case, Detective Laura Reynolds reflected on the journey. What began as a mysterious and unsettling report had transformed into a story of discovery, persistence, and justice. The warehouse, once a place of secrecy, had revealed the truth. Max, the cadaver dog, had demonstrated the power of instinct and training, and Laura, along with her dedicated team, had ensured that justice would be served. The case was closed, but the lessons it taught about observation, patience, and collaboration would remain with her for a lifetime.